The afternoon sun poured across the parking lot of a busy suburban shopping plaza, the kind of place where families hurried from store to store. The carts rattling, voices mingling in a dull, constant buzz. Beyond the automatic sliding glass doors of a popular retail store, shoppers carried bags brimming with groceries, clothes, and toys. Among them was Monica Harris, a tall, poised black woman in her early 40s. Her presence was commanding without effort, broad shoulders, steady eyes, and a quiet confidence that came from years of discipline. She wore jeans, a crisp white shirt tucked neatly beneath a navy blazer, and low-heeled shoes. To anyone looking casually, she might have appeared like a professional woman out on errands after work. What no one in that store knew, however, was that Monica Harris was not just any professional. She was a respected police captain with over 2 decades of service in the force. But today, she was simply off duty. No badge pinned to her chest, no uniform to signal authority, no sidearm holstered at her hip. Just Monica, the woman, the shopper, the citizen. She had a short list written on the back of a receipt. Shampoo, laundry detergent, and a small gift bag for her niece's birthday. As she strolled through the aisles, her phone buzzed, her sister reminding her not to forget balloons. Monica chuckled softly, slipped the phone into her purse, and moved along. The store was lively with chatter and the soft beeping of checkout scanners. A tired mother tried to calm her crying toddler. Teenagers clustered around the candy aisle, laughing too loudly. Employees stocked shelves, exchanging whispers about after-shift plans. Monica blended in, quietly minding her business. Yet, a pair of sharp eyes watched her every move. At the end of an aisle, manager Carl Benson, a stocky man in his 50s, with thinning hair and a perpetual frown, leaned against a display of cereal boxes. His eyes narrowed as he spotted Monica slip a small birthday card into her basket. He didn't notice the other shoppers. He didn't focus on the young man in a hoodie slipping a soda can into his backpack or the teenage girl pocketing lip gloss. No, Carl's attention locked solely on Monica. "Hum," he muttered under his breath, crossing his arms. "I've seen her kind before." The way he said it carried venom, casual prejudice disguised as suspicion. Carl strutted toward one of his security guards. Derek, a lanky man in his late 20s who wore the store's polo shirt a size too small. Eager to prove himself, Carl leaned close and whispered, "Keep an eye on aisle 6. That woman's up to something." Derek followed Carl's gaze, spotting Monica browsing through the detergents. She looks normal to me," he said hesitantly. Carl scowled. That's how they do it. Look clean, act innocent, then walk out with half the store under their coat. Watch her. If she so much as twitches wrong, I want her stopped. Derek shifted uncomfortably but nodded. He grabbed his radio, pressing it lightly. Copy that. Keeping an eye. Monica, unaware of the scrutiny, carefully compared to detergent brands, then placed one in her basket. She hummed softly to herself, glancing at her list again. Her mind was on family, not trouble. But Carl was already constructing a narrative in his head. He followed her movements from a distance, his lips curling into a tight smile whenever she touched an item. Every gesture, every pause, he twisted into evidence. By the time Monica headed to checkout, basket in hand, Carl had convinced himself she was a thief. The lines were long, but she didn't complain. She placed her items on the conveyor belt, pulling her wallet from her purse. The cashier, a young woman with bright eyes, scanned the items and smiled politely. That'll be $27.42. Monica handed over cash to crisp 20s. The cashier counted change, placing the bills and coins carefully into Monica's palm. Just as Monica slipped the change into her purse, Carl stormed forward. His voice boomed across the store, startling customers. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside." All eyes turned. Monica frowned, blinking in surprise. "Excuse me?" Carl's face flushed red with self-righteousness. He jabbed a finger at her purse. "You didn't pay for everything. I saw you slipping items in there. We take shoplifting very seriously here." The cashier's eyes widened. "Wait now, sir. She paid for." Carl cut her off sharply. I know what I saw. Security. Derek rushed forward, awkward but eager, and positioned himself near Monica as though blocking her escape. The crowd murmured, phones already sliding out to record. A ripple of whispers cut through the air. Shoplifting. Did she really? She doesn't look like it. Monica stood still, her face calm but her jaw tight. She looked at Carl squarely. I paid for every item. You can check the receipt, Carl sneered. Oh, I will. But people like you always have tricks up their sleeves. The cashier tried again, her voice trembling. Sir, she gave me cash. I counted, Carl snapped. Stay out of this. I know how thieves work. Don't be fooled by a sweet smile. Kata drew a slow breath. Her eyes flicked to Derek. Would you mind? Check the bag against the receipt. Derek hesitated, looking between Carl and Monica. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. Finally, he muttered, Okay. He reached into the bag, pulling out the detergent and card. He matched it against the receipt. His brows knitted. Looks like it matches. Carl's voice thundered over him. Check her purse. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Monica's lips pressed tightly. She held her purse closer. No one is searching my personal belongings without cause. Carl smirked. Refusing a search? Classic sign of guilt. The tension in the air grew heavier, pressing down on everyone present. A young mother clutched her child closer. Teenagers whispered, eyes wide, filming every second. Carl turned toward the front entrance, signaling to a uniformed security guard near the door. Call the cops. We're handling this properly. Monica's heart thudded, but her voice remained steady. I've told you, I've done nothing wrong. This is a mistake. Carl leaned closer, his breath heavy with arrogance. You picked the wrong store to pull your little stunt, lady. The police will sort you out. For a moment, Monica considered revealing the badge tucked deep inside her purse. One flash of it, and this humiliation could end instantly. But she stopped herself. Something inside told her to wait, to endure, to let this play out, because sometimes the truth needed time to cut deeper. Moments later, the sound of sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder. The crowd shifted, anticipation buzzing. A boy whispered to his friend, Oh man, this is gonna go viral. The police arrived, 2 officers, both white men in pressed uniforms, walking briskly into the store. One, Officer Grayson, was in his early 30s with sharp eyes and a stern jaw. His partner, Officer Mills, was older, broader. With a permanent scowl, Carl rushed forward eagerly, pointing at Monica. That's her. That's the thief. Caught red-handed trying to walk out with stolen goods. The officers turned their gaze toward Monica, who stood tall, hands at her sides, face composed. Grayson barked, Ma'am, step away from your belongings. Monica spoke evenly. Officers, I paid for my items. The cashier can confirm, Carl interjected furiously. Don't listen to her lies. She's slick. I've been in this business 30 years. I know a shoplifter when I see one. The cashier raised a trembling hand, trying to defend Monica again. She really did pay. Mills cut her off sharply. We'll handle this. He stepped toward Monica, his hand hovering near his cuffs. Ma'am, we need to search your belongings. Monica's chest rose and fell in slow control. Not without probable cause. Carl laughed bitterly. Probable cause? What is she? A lawyer? Grayson's voice hardened. Ma'am, if you don't cooperate, we'll have no choice but to place you under arrest. The entire store seemed to hold its breath. Shoppers leaned in closer, eyes wide. Phones recording every angle. Monica remained motionless, her eyes steady, her dignity unbroken. Inside, a storm of anger swirled, but she refused to let it crack her composure at last. She said calmly, If you feel you must arrest me, then do what you think is right. The words, so steady, seemed to confuse Grayson for a moment. But Carl clapped his hands together with satisfaction. Yes, take her in. Teach her a lesson. And with that, Officer Mills stepped forward, gripping Monica's wrists with rough hands and snapping the cuffs around them. The metallic click echoed like a gunshot through the store. The crowd gasped. Phones tilted closer. Murmurs rose louder. Carl folded his arms, smirking triumphantly. I thought you could get away with it, huh? Monica lifted her chin, meeting his eyes. Her voice was soft but cutting. The truth will find its way out. As the officers led her toward the exit, whispers chased her. Some sympathetic, some judgmental. She didn't look like a thief. Maybe she really is. The sliding doors hissed open, sunlight spilling across the scene as Monica was guided outside, handcuffed into the waiting patrol car. Her heart pounded, but her spirit remained steady. She knew the storm wasn't over. It was only beginning, because the truth would come crashing down harder than any of them expected. The patrol car door slammed shut, sealing Monica inside. The cuffs bit at her wrists as she sat stiffly, staring out through the tinted glass at the curious crowd gathering near the store entrance. Some had their phones raised high, documenting her walk of shame. Others shook their heads in judgment, their faces twisted in disappointment. Inside the car, Monica's reflection stared back at her in the glass composed, but with the faintest trace of pain flickering in her eyes. She closed them briefly, whispering a silent prayer for strength. Officer Grayson slid into the driver's seat while Mills climbed in beside him. Carl Benson leaned against the patrol car, smugness practically radiating from his posture. Thank you, officers. I knew she was trouble the second she walked in. Make sure she learns her lesson. Grayson gave a curt nod. We'll handle it. Then, without sparing Monica a second glance, he started the engine. The vehicle pulled out of the lot, sirens off, but lights flashing faintly, drawing the eyes of every passing driver. Monica sat in silence, her wrists aching, her dignity bruised. She had endured dangerous standoffs, intense negotiations, and even stared down criminals who threatened her life. But nothing compared to the sting of being treated like a criminal for simply shopping. She shifted slightly, her voice calm but firm. Officers, I told you, I paid for everything. The cashier saw it. You could check the cameras? Mills scoffed without turning around. Yeah, well, thieves always have excuses. We've heard it all before. Grayson's jaw tightened, his eyes fixed on the road. Look, ma'am, best thing you can do is cooperate. If you're innocent, the system will figure it out. Monica's lips pressed into a thin line. The system. She had dedicated her life to that very system, training young officers, advocating for community trust, working late nights to ensure justice was served. And here she was, cuffed like a common criminal. Her voice ignored. The drive stretched longer than it needed to, each red light amplifying her humiliation. Pedestrians stared. Children pointed. A man walking his dog whispered to his wife, "Must have been stealing." Monica forced herself to sit taller, refusing to shrink under their judgment. At last they arrived at the precinct. The station loomed tall, its brick exterior and buzzing neon sign, a place Monica knew all too well but never from this side of the equation. The irony cut deep. As the officers escorted her inside, heads turned. Desk clerks, other officers, and even civilians waiting to file complaints stopped mid-conversation. Phones clicked. Murmurs filled the air. One officer at the desk frowned. Shoplifting, really? Mills shrugged. Caught red-handed. Store manager swears she was stuffing items. The officer's gaze lingered on Monica, something in his eyes suggesting doubt. But he said nothing as Mills pushed the paperwork forward. Monica was guided toward the holding area. A stark room with metal benches, cold white walls, and the faint stench of disinfectant. The steel bars clanged as they opened the cell. She stepped inside, wrists still cuffed, dignity still intact. Mills smirked. Sit tight, sweetheart. Maybe this'll teach you something. Monica looked him squarely in the eye, her voice level. Perhaps it will teach you something instead. For a flicker of a second, Mills faltered, then barked a laugh. You've got nerve. I'll give you that. The bars shut. The metallic echo rang through the room like a final insult. Hours crawled by. Monica sat in silence, her back straight, her eyes steady. She noticed every detail, the flicker of the fluorescent lights, the scuff marks on the floor, the restless shifting of other detainees. Some stared at her curiously, others with judgment. A young Latina woman on the bench opposite leaned forward. "What did they get you for?" Monica exhaled slowly. "Shoplifting, supposedly." The woman's eyebrows shot up. You don't look like she caught herself embarrassed." "Sorry, you just don't give off that vibe." Monica gave a faint smile. "Looks can be deceiving." The woman nodded solemnly. "Tell me about it. I've been in and out of this place for things I didn't even do. Cops don't care. They just pick who they think fits." Her words stung, not because they were wrong, but because Monica had heard them countless times from the other side of the bars, spoken by people she had arrested, many of them unjustly profiled. She had always believed she worked hard to break that cycle, to show fairness. But now, living it, she felt the depth of their pain. Back at the retail store, Carl Benson basked in his supposed victory. He strutted behind the counter, recounting the incident to anyone who would listen. "Told you, didn't I? My instincts are sharp. She thought she could outsmart me, but I've been running this place 30 years. I know a crook when I see one." The cashier, Emily, shifted uncomfortably, her conscience gnawing at her. She remembered clearly the cash, the receipt, Monica's calm demeanor. Every fiber of her being screamed that Carl was wrong. Finally, she spoke up. "Sir, with all respect, I think you made a mistake. She paid for everything." "I saw it." Carl wheeled on her, his face red. "Are you calling me a liar?" Emily's voice wavered, but stayed steady. "No, I'm saying maybe you misinterpreted what you saw." Carl's glare darkened. "If you like your job, you'll keep opinions to yourself. This store doesn't tolerate theft, and neither do I." Emily fell silent, but inside, guilt churned. She couldn't shake Monica's calm words, her steady eyes. Something wasn't right. At the precinct, word began to spread. Officers passing by the holding area did double takes. Some recognized Monica vaguely, her face familiar from meetings, trainings, or precinct briefings. But out of uniform, few placed her instantly. Whispers floated. One young officer muttered to another, "Isn't that—" "Nah, can't be." Monica sat, her wrists still cuffed, her dignity still intact. She replayed the events in her mind, each detail sharper than the last. Carl's accusing glare, the officer's dismissive tone, the crowd's judgmental stares. She could have ended it in an instant by revealing her badge. But she had chosen silence for now. She knew that sometimes lessons weren't taught by power displayed, but by truth revealed in its own time, still. The sting was real. Her phone buzzed in the evidence bag across the room, calls from her sister, likely worried about her delay. Monica longed to reassure her, but for now, she sat in enforced silence. Evening fell. Carl Benson, at home now, sat smugly at his kitchen table, retelling the story to his wife over dinner. You should have seen her face when the cops cuffed her. Priceless. Thought she was smarter than me. People like that always think they can get away with it. His wife, a weary woman tired of his arrogance, frowned. "Carl, are you sure she really stole? What if she didn't?" Carl slammed his fork down. "Of course she did. Why are you taking her side? I know what I saw." But even as he said it, doubt flickered briefly in his eyes. He shoved it down, unwilling to admit he might have been wrong. Back at the station, Anika was finally escorted into an interrogation room. A harsh light buzzed overhead, casting long shadows. Officer Grayson sat across from her, file in hand. He cleared his throat. "Look, Miss Harris." "Captain Harris," she corrected quietly. Though he didn't register the weight of the title, Grayson pressed on. "You've been accused of shoplifting. The store manager swears he saw you conceal merchandise. Your refusal to allow a search of your purse doesn't help your case." Monica folded her hands calmly on the table, the cuffs clinking. "The cashier can verify I paid. The receipt will confirm it. The security cameras will show it clearly. I've cooperated. What more do you need?" Grayson hesitated, flipping through the file. He looked less certain than before. Mills, leaning against the wall, rolled his eyes. "She's just slick. They all are." Play the innocent card until someone slips up. Monica's gaze cut to him, sharp as glass. They all are? Mills smirked. You know what I mean? Her voice dropped, calm but laced with steel. Yes, I know exactly what you mean. The room grew tense. Grayson shifted uncomfortably, but Mills remained defiant. Finally, Grayson sighed. We'll pull the camera footage. If it shows what you say, we'll sort this out. Monica leaned back, her face unreadable. The truth always finds the light. Meanwhile, Emily, the cashier, made a choice. She slipped her phone into her apron pocket and whispered to a coworker, "Cover me." Then she hurried to the manager's office, logging into the security system while Carl was away. Her hands trembled, but her determination burned. She scrolled through the footage, heart pounding. And there it was, Monica, clear as day, paying with cash, the exchange of change, the receipt. No concealment, no theft. Emily exhaled in relief and horror. Carl had been wrong terribly, humiliatingly wrong. She quickly downloaded the footage onto a flash drive, her conscience driving her every move. This isn't right, she whispered to herself. They arrested an innocent woman. Decision would set in motion the chain of events that would shatter Carl's arrogance and expose the truth for all to see. But for Monica, the night dragged on, each minute heavier than the last. She sat in silence, awaiting the inevitable moment when the truth would surface, because she knew it always did. The precinct clock ticked past midnight, its rhythmic click echoing through the dimly lit halls. Most of the desks had emptied, only a skeleton crew remained. Yet whispers still lingered about the black woman arrested for shoplifting, about how composed she seemed, about whether the story even added up. Inside the holding cell, Monica Harris sat upright, eyes steady despite exhaustion tugging at her. The cuffs had been removed, but the ache in her wrists lingered. She watched as officers passed by, some sneaking curious glances at her, others avoiding her gaze altogether. She breathed deeply, reminding herself of something her late father used to say. Patience is power. The truth doesn't need rushing, it needs revealing. Just as her eyes closed in reflection, the cell door creaked open. Officer Grayson stood there, expression unreadable.
Harris.
Let's go. Monica rose slowly, her movements deliberate, dignified. Grayson led her down the narrow hallway into the interrogation room once more. Mills leaned against the wall with a cocky grin, arms folded. On the table sat a laptop. Paused on grainy security footage, Grayson hit play. The screen showed Monica at the cashier's countercom, polite, paying with cash. The receipt exchanged. The exact moment the change landed in her palm. Every detail, undeniable. Grayson exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. Well, that complicates things. Mills frowned. Wait, maybe she hid something in her purse. Grayson cut him off. The footage is clear. She didn't take anything. Monica leaned forward slightly, her voice calm but laced with quiet authority. I told you. But instead of listening, you cuffed me. Dragged me here. Humiliated me in front of strangers. Atis Mills rolled his eyes. Don't act like some saint. You were suspicious. That's enough reason for us. Her gaze pierced him. Suspicion is not guilt, and prejudice is not proof. The words hung heavy in the air, sinking deeper than either officer wanted to admit. Before the tension could break, a knock rattled the door. Emily, the cashier, stepped in nervously, clutching the flash drive like a lifeline. I brought this. The footage. It shows she paid. Grayson nodded warily. We've seen it. Emily's eyes darted to Monica, then to the officers. She didn't do anything. You have to let her go, Mills muttered under his breath. Great, another hero? But Emily pressed on, her voice trembling with courage. You all made a mistake. A big one. Monica studied her for a long moment. The girl's fear was obvious, but so was her conviction. Finally, Monica offered the faintest smile. Thank you. Meanwhile, at his home, Carl Benson sat in front of his television, sipping beer, still reveling in his supposed victory. A news alert flashed across the screen. Viral video. Woman wrongfully accused of shoplifting. Arrested at local retail store. Carl's smirk vanished. He fumbled for the remote, turning up the volume. The clip played footage recorded by bystanders showing Monica being cuffed, her calm words, the smugness in Carl's voice. Social media captions scrolled across the screen. Innocent woman arrested. Racial profiling at its finest. Manager should be fired. He muttered, "No, no, no." His wife, arms crossed, shook her head. "I told you, Carl. What if you were wrong?" He slammed his fist on the table, face reddening. "I wasn't wrong." She must have, but his voice cracked. Even he didn't believe himself anymore. Back at the precinct, Grayson sighed heavily. "You're free to go." He slid Monica's purse back across the table. Monica didn't reach for it. Instead, she leaned forward, her tone sharp as steel. "Not yet," Grayson blinked. "Excuse me?" Monica stood slowly, her posture commanding. She reached into her purse, fingers brushing past her wallet until they closed around something cold, metallic. With measured precision, she pulled out a police badge and set it on the table with a sharp clink. The room froze. Mills' grin shattered. His face drained of color. Grayson's jaw dropped. Emily gasped softly, eyes wide. Monica's voice carried the weight of 20 years of authority. "Captain Monica Harris. Metro Police. Badge number 4725. The silence was deafening. She continued, every word deliberate. "I've led teams into hostage situations. I've trained rookies fresh out of the academy. I've spent my life building bridges between law enforcement and communities that distrust us. And tonight, your prejudice turned me from captain to criminal in the blink of an eye." Grayson swallowed hard. "Captain, we didn't know." Monica's eyes narrowed. "That's exactly the problem. You didn't care to know. You saw what you wanted to see, and you acted," Mills stammered, his arrogance collapsing. "We were just following protocol." Monica's voice rose, sharp as a blade. "Protocol is about facts, about evidence, about justice. What you followed was bias, and that is not policing. That is profiling." Neither officer could meet her gaze. Emily, though stunned, nodded slowly, as though the words were sinking into her soul. Monica picked up her badge again, slipping it back into her purse. "I could file charges right now. I could end your careers with a single report, but I won't. Not because you don't deserve it, but because sometimes the bigger punishment is living with the weight of your actions." Her words cut deeper than any disciplinary hearing could. News traveled fast. By morning, every major outlet had covered the story: off-duty police captain, wrongfully arrested in shoplifting case. Clips of Carl Benson's accusations played on repeat. The image of Monica being cuffed went viral. Accompanied by hashtags demanding justice, Carl arrived at the store early, only to be greeted by protesters outside, customers holding signs: "End racial profiling," "Fire the manager." His staff looked at him with thinly veiled contempt. Emily, now emboldened, confronted him directly. "We all saw the footage," she paid. "You ruined her reputation and embarrassed this store." Carl's bluster deflated. For the first time, he had no words. Within hours, corporate headquarters called. His position? Terminated, effective immediately. Carl sat in his empty office, head in hands, the walls closing in. His arrogance, his prejudice, his refusal to listen it had all led to this. At the precinct, Mills and Grayson stood in front of the chief, who held Monica's report in hand. Though she hadn't pressed charges, her account of their behavior was damning. The chief's disappointment was palpable. "You embarrassed this department," he said coldly. "You let bias cloud your judgment. This will stay on your record. Consider your futures here uncertain." Both men lowered their heads, shame burning through them. As they left, they passed Monica in the hallway. She didn't gloat. She didn't sneer. She simply looked at them, eyes steady, conveying more than words ever could. "Remember this? Learn from it." Later that evening, Monica finally sat at her sister's kitchen table, a cup of tea warming her hands. Her niece, the one she'd been shopping for, bounded into the room with wide eyes. Auntie, I saw you on TV. Were you really arrested? Monica's heart clenched. She forced a gentle smile. Yes, sweetheart. But it was all a misunderstanding. Her sister shook her head, anger simmering beneath her calm. You shouldn't have had to go through that. Monica sighed softly. Maybe not. But sometimes, we go through storms so others can learn. Maybe someone watching will think twice before judging the next person who looks like me. Maybe an officer will pause before acting on assumption. Maybe a manager will see a customer instead of a suspect. Her sister reached across the table, squeezing her hand. You always find the lesson. Monica smiled faintly, though her eyes betrayed the lingering hurt. Because if I don't, then all this pain is wasted. The next week, Monica stood at the front of a police training seminar. Rows of young recruits sat in crisp uniforms, notebooks ready, eyes eager. She looked at them with the weight of lived experience. Before you see a criminal, she began, see a human being. Before you judge by appearance, judge by facts. The badge you wear is not just power, it's responsibility. And if you misuse it, you destroy not only the life of the person you target, but the very trust this badge is supposed to stand for. The recruits leaned in, hanging on every word. Monica's voice softened, but carried steel beneath. I know because I lived it. Not as an officer, but as a woman wrongly accused. Gasps rippled through the room. She let the silence settle, the weight of her testimony pressing deep into their young hearts. Then she continued, don't repeat the mistakes of those who forgot what justice truly means. Be better. This story reminds us that appearances can deceive, but actions reveal the truth. Too often people judge based on skin color, on assumptions, on prejudice disguised as suspicion. But justice is not about what we think. It's about what we know. Monica's dignity reminds us that true strength lies not in lashing out, but in holding firm until the truth shines through. So the next time you're tempted to judge someone without proof, remember, one moment of prejudice can destroy a life, but one moment of fairness can change it.